Hi guys, and welcome to our first video notes of the school year. Just a couple things we didn't really talk about in class. These are our notes that we would normally take if we were sitting in our classroom at school. And so because they are our notes, I do expect you to be writing down and taking notes on the videos. So whether you prefer a spiral notebook or you prefer just regular loose paper kept in a 3-ring binder, I do expect you to be taking notes on what we're learning in these videos. So you're going to pause the video right now, go find your spiral notebook or some paper to take notes on. And let's start by taking our notes by writing down the title for today. So today's title can be found on the screen right now. Today's title is 1-2, Order of Operations. So that's what we're going to write on the top of our notebook paper. And then each day we'll have at most 2 videos. Both of those videos put together would be considered a single class period of taking notes. So you're going to take notes from both videos on the same paper. They will also both have the same title. So go ahead and for right now, we're going to take notes on video 1 and let's get started. We're starting our first lesson with the order of operations. And if you don't remember what that is, we have an acronym for it. It's PEMDAS. PEMDAS. Now you want to copy this down into your notes exactly how it looks on the screen. There is a reasoning to the format, okay? And I'm going to run through really quickly with you what PEMDAS stands for. We're going to start at the top of the picture, and the P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. Now, parentheses doesn't mean just find parentheses anywhere in the problem and do that. Parentheses means look inside of your parentheses, or they could be brackets. They could look like any of these. And on the inside of the parentheses, you want to take all of the math that's happening and you want to simplify that down to a single number. If it's already a single number in the parentheses, then that doesn't count for this parentheses thing. We're going to talk about that later when we get to the letter M. So again, parentheses means simplify it down to a single number inside of the parentheses or the brackets or whatever's in the problem. Once you get all of the parentheses to be down to a single number, next you're going to look for E, which stands for exponents. Exponents are the little numbers that are written above a bigger number. Now, here's some examples with variables, but for today, we're going to do something like 2 squared, 4 to the third, things like that. An exponent is a special type of multiplication that tells you how many times to multiply a number by itself. For instance, if we had 3 squared, that would mean 3 times 3. We're multiplying 3 2 times. Once you've taken care of all of your exponents, then we have the letters M and D. Now, I wrote those side by side because M and D get done at the same time. It's multiplying, which could be drawn with a dot, or those parentheses we talked about earlier, and then dividing. And dividing can be written with a division sign or as a fraction bar. Now, multiplying and dividing get done at the same time from left to right. We're not going to do all of our multiplying and then all of our dividing. We're going to do it in whatever order it happens in. Maybe it does happen multiply then divide. Maybe it's divide then multiply. Maybe it's divide, multiply, divide again, multiply again, and divide at the end. If that's the case, again, you want to just kind of go from left to right, and we're doing one thing at a time. So I'd start dividing and write a new step, then I'd multiply, then I'd take that and divide, and you're just going from left to right, and you're doing one thing at a time. So make sure that you multiplying and dividing are done at the same time. You don't have to finish all of one before you start the next one. And then the same thing is going to happen for adding and subtracting. So again, I wrote those side by side because they get done at the same time from left to right. Whichever comes first gets done first. So adding, usually written with a plus sign. Subtracting is usually written with a minus sign. Now, again, we're not going to do all the adding and then all the subtracting. We're going to do whichever one comes first. It can be a mix and match. We might have some adding and then some subtracting and then some adding again. That's fine. You just do it in whatever order it gets written in. At this point in time, you should be done with the math problem and you should have a single number, and that would be your final answer. Now, hopefully you, again, copy down this chart. If you need to pause the video to do that, go ahead and pause now. We're going to do 2 sample problems, but we're actually not going to learn how to do PEMDAS in this video. That's the next video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to analyze somebody else's work and see what they did wrong. So here's our first example, and you'll notice in the directions it says find the mistake. So go ahead and copy down all of the different steps onto your paper. You can pause the video if you need to. In these problems where we're trying to find the mistake, we're trying to figure out what did this person do wrong. Normally, we would circle a very specific spot where the mistake happened, and then we would explain in words what they did wrong. They did this thing, and they were supposed to do this other thing first. Okay? So we're going to find a very specific spot to circle. Now, the trick to these problems is you will never circle anything on this first line. This first line is the original problem. There are no mistakes in the original problem. The original problem is just like what was typed in your math book. If you're circling something on the first step, you're basically telling me that there's a typo in the math problem. So never ever circle the first step, the original problem. We can start trying to circle things around the second, third, or final step. And again, we want to circle a very specific spot where the student did something wrong. So we can't say that there's anything wrong with this first step because that's just the original problem. But looking at this first step and going down to the second step, let's see what they did. So this student, first of all, they did 12 divided by 3, and they changed that to 4. And then they did change one other thing. They also did 3 times 8, and they multiplied that together, and they made that a 24. So we just need to see, is what they did, is that valid? Is that what they're allowed to do? Well, first of all, for PEMDAS, there's no letter P, there's no parentheses anywhere in this problem, and there's no letter E, there's no exponents anywhere in this problem. And so I'm going to skip those first 2 steps. And so now I'm on M and D, multiplying and dividing. Now, multiplying and dividing happen at the same time from left to right. Whichever one comes first gets done first. And so looking at this problem, dividing happens first, and they did it first. So that's great. That's fantastic. But the next thing that happens is another division problem. And this student just kind of skipped over that division problem and said, I want to do this multiplication problem. And so that's where the mistake happened. Now, again, we're not going to circle the 3 times 8 because that's not a mistake. The mistake is they should not have written a 24 here. They should have kept that 3 times 8. We weren't quite ready to change that into a different number yet. Okay? So when you're doing your homework tonight, there's going to be a find the mistake problem. Make sure that you're circling the new number that they wrote down that was an incorrect number. In this instance, it's that 24. And then if you need to, you can always write down an explanation as well. Let's see, I can't type on this. So the explanation for this one would be something like, they weren't supposed to multiply yet. First, they needed to take care of the division problem that happens before the multiplying. So you would want to write me something like that. Okay, and then you just need to find the first mistake. After they made that first mistake, everything after that is wrong anyway. So we're not going to find any other mistakes in this problem. I want to do one more find the mistake with you before we're done with this video. So again, if you can please pause the video and write down this problem in your notes. And I would like to kindly remind you that we're never going to circle a mistake in the first step. The first step can't be wrong. The first step is the original problem. All right, so I have my original problem, and if we're looking at that PEMDAS, this time we are going to start with the letter P. So what I want to do is I want to take any parentheses, this is how we're starting the problem, and I want to simplify that down to a single number. Now, when you're working in the parentheses, you're also going to follow the order of operations. So within the parentheses, it is important that I do my multiplying first. And I did. So that's a great step. Now, there's something else that the student did here on that first step. They also decided that they wanted to do 20 plus 3, and they changed it to 23. Now, that is incorrect. This is not part of the parentheses. It's outside of the parentheses. It's kind of on its own. And it's an adding problem. Adding is the very last thing we should do. and they decided that they wanted to do it first. So that's where the mistake happened. The mistake happened when they wrote this number 23. That number 23 should still be a 20 plus 3. And so we would circle the number 23 because that should not be there. And we would write something about like they did adding first when adding is supposed to be done last. And that's the mistake that they made. So this is how you find your mistake. This is the end of today's first video. For this first video, there's only one homework assignment, one problem, and you can find that in the directions. So I'll see you on our second video.